The world is riddled with bad people, who you are about to get to know a bit more intimately. It's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Number 1. This happened a few years ago, at about 2 a.m. in the morning. I had been out clubbing and was a bit drunk, so I was not as alert as usual. Whilst waiting for the bus, a man sat next to me. He was big and burly, in his early 20s, with blonde hair and puke on his shirt. Something about him immediately unsettled me. It was as if I knew he had sat down, not because of the bus, but because of me. Which was an absurd thought. We were surrounded by people on their way home after all. The bus finally arrived, and I thought I would be rid of the guy. I was not so lucky, however. He decided to sit on the seat across from mine, and I noticed him watching me. He wasn't even trying to hide it, just blatantly staring at me. Oh well, I thought. Maybe he was just spacing out or something. After a while, I briefly glanced in his direction. It was purely for the sake of curiosity. I should not have done this, as it only seemed to encourage him. He asked me what the time was, but made no further attempt at engaging me in conversation, as my reply was rather curt. The bus stopped, and the man appeared to get off. I was glad, as we were not too far from my own stop. Then I heard someone call out to me. It took me a while to realize that they were talking to me, as they just shouted until I had no choice to look up. The man had not gotten off, but was standing in the doorway looking at me. "Are you getting off?" he demanded to know. I just stared at him. The combination of alcohol and sleep deprivation lulled my senses to the extent that I did not realize how inappropriate it was for him to ask a stranger this. He acted like we knew each other and that we were traveling together, even though we had barely exchanged a word. He repeated his question several times, before re-entering the bus and sitting down across from me again. This time, however, he put his feet on the seat next to mine, so that I was caged between him and the window. I was not yet afraid, although it was unnerving how he had attached himself to me. It was as if my subconscious was trying to tell me something was off, but I was refusing to listen to it. It was obvious that he was following me at this point. I figured we were on a bus with several other people to fend him off if need be. The bus stopped once more, and I didn't make a move. Even though the man got off, it was not my stop after all. The bus driver announced that everyone had to get off as it was the last stop. They may have changed the route since it was after midnight. I stood up and looked behind me. The bus was completely empty. Everyone must have already gotten off at the former stop, and we were just outside the city, surrounded by nothing but trees and mountains. Perhaps I could run to the nearest house, but it seemed unlikely in my current state. Besides, this guy was easily double my size if not bigger. I got off and waited right outside the bus, waiting my options. I could see the stranger from the corner of my eye. He was some meters away, turned halfway away from me, but I knew that he was keeping tabs on me. The bus driver looked at me at that point and signaled that I should come over. "Do you know this man?" he asked. I shook my head. and then he considered this for a moment, and told me to hurry back onto the bus. The doors had barely closed behind me when the stranger threw himself at the doors, screaming and kicking to be let in, hitting the doors violently. He sounded enraged as the door shook. It was terrifying to imagine what he may have done if I'd have been alone with him. I sobered up instantly. The bus driver drove me home, and I thanked him profusely, crying whilst doing so, which was kind of embarrassing. It was incredibly stupid of me to have let it go so far, and who knows what would have happened if it were not for the kind bus driver, with just us two alone at that bus stop in the dead of night. The whole ordeal was so strange, as I live in an incredibly safe country and have never really been conscious of stranger danger until then. So, creepy stranger, let's not meet again. Number 2. I recently went on a hike with my friend and his mini schnauzer at our local state park. We had gone on the trail several times before, as it is very popular with hikers and families. It was late evening and getting dark, so we picked up the pace. Once it was dark enough to not be able to see where we were stepping, I turned on a little flashlight that my mum had given me just that day. She had said that she was worried about me walking to my car after my late night classes, and told me to shine it in someone's face if there was anyone creepy, which I thought was silly. Bringing this flashlight was a total fluke, but I was happy to have it for the increasingly dark hike. We were about a 10-minute walk away from the edge of the forest, where we were parked, when we encountered a lone adult male walking in the same direction as us about 100 yards away. He was a Caucasian in his mid-50s, wearing non-hiking clothes, and he was walking slowly, which was odd because it was very dark and most hikers on the trails were long gone, and if not, they would be hurrying out of the woods. The man did not have a flashlight in the very dark forest. My finger slipped from the flashlight and it turned off for a few seconds. I turned it back on, and the man had stopped walking and was standing in the path ahead of us. He quickly moved to the side as my flashlight illuminated him. We heard him speaking on his cell phone whilst we continued towards his direction. As we walked by, the man was standing on our side of the path. Our normally friendly dog barked and growled at him. The only words we heard the man say were, "Ah, she's an ankle biter." He was suddenly not talking on his phone, and I shined the flashlight in his direction whilst we walked by to know where he was located in the extremely dark woods. I had a really weird feeling about him and started jogging away with my friend. We ended up in a full run out of the woods. As we were getting back to the car, we saw the man exit the woods about a minute after us and walking quickly towards our car. He had to have been running because we ran the whole way out of there, and we're in our mid-20s, and this guy was significantly older, so it would have required a lot of effort to run that far that fast for him. When we got in the car, with the man still quickly approaching, I told my friend to floor it, and we got out of there before he made it to our vehicle. Number 3. I shoot music videos and film stuff for a living. I grew up in a rough part of the city, and I have struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol on and off over the years. I have been doing well quite recently, and I have met, dealt with, and grown up around criminals my entire life. Several of these criminals have turned out to be murderers, just to give you an example of how bad the area is. I get most of my work done through word of mouth, and bigger clients whose music has some buzz. Other people see my work and ask who did the video, and my clients or friends will refer them to me. So, I get a phone call from this rapper, and he asks if I can make a video for him. I had never met him before, but I had seen his stuff online, so I decided that I'd shoot his video. The dude was kind of weird, but most artists tend to be, and it wasn't until I had met him in person that I got a very weird vibe from him. I couldn't put my finger on it, but he was just extra shady. I've only gotten a few bad vibes like that from about 2 other people before. He's just the kind of person who you really didn't want to be around or associated with in any way. But I needed the money. We did the video and released it, and he liked my work. So, naturally, he asked me to shoot another one of the videos for him. But because I had gotten such a bad vibe the first time, I decided it wouldn't be worth another go. He also wanted me to travel out of the city to shoot at some hotel, and hotel shoots aren't exactly uncommon in our industry. But bad vibes and travelling with all my gear stopped me from going. And the way he had gone about paying me for the previous video was kind of a hassle. So I made up an excuse that I had too many bookings for something like that. That weekend, he was arrested and charged at the hotel out of town for human trafficking a 14-year-old girl. Police say that 2 men, one was this rapper, forced the girl to have sex with them, and then take various photos that were used to advertise online. Apparently, the men had arranged for other men to have sex with this girl at various motel rooms in the area. I took the video I did for him down, of course. So, creepy paedophile rapper, let's never meet again. Number 4. I was living with my stepsister in a small apartment, and we both worked night shifts. I usually got home a few hours before she did. I had just gotten home when there was a knock at the door. I didn't recognize the guy through the peephole, but I assumed it was one of her friends and opened the door to tell him that she was still at work. He surprised me when he said that he was there to see me. He said he lived a few doors down and that he had seen me carrying a guitar case to and from my car and wanted to know if I played. I said that I did. It was apparent at this point that the man was very drunk. He asked if I'd be willing to play something for him. I knew it was a bad idea, but I didn't know how to say no. So I said, sure. He came inside and locked the door behind him. Not the greatest sign, but this was already not going well. He tried to follow me into my bedroom as I fetched the guitar, but I managed to tell him to sit on the couch in the living room so that he would be comfortable. I played a song or two, and he started crying and said that I had the voice of an angel. He wanted to play a song for me if that was okay. I said sure, and passed him my guitar. He was fumbling around and didn't seem to know how to play. He assured me that the problem was my guitar, as he was used to an electric, you see. He used to be the lead guitarist for Metallica actually, but left shortly before they became famous. In fact, most of their songs were originally his, and they stole them. I didn't believe a word of it, but nodded and acted sympathetic. He wanted to prove to me that he was a really good guitar player, and asked me to come over to his place so that he could play his electric guitar. Again, I knew this was an awful idea. It was bad enough letting some drunk stranger into my house, but leaving with him would be even worse. Still, he insisted, and I didn't know how to refuse. His place was a mess. He couldn't find his guitar. Then he said that he forgot that he sold it a long time ago. He offered to put on the newest Star Wars movie, and that we could drink some beer instead. I said that's fine, so he put on the movie and said some stuff about how his family were involved in filming it, and various other claims that were ridiculous. About 20 minutes into the film, he told me he had something to confess. He said that a dark force came to him every night, and that it was Satan, and that Satan kept telling him to kill me. He started crying again, and said that he didn't want to kill me, because I was so nice and probably an angel. He also said that Satan would soon take over his body, so I needed to leave immediately if I wanted to live. I was more than fine with that, so I got up to go. But before I could get to the door, he asked me to wait, because he wanted to give me a gift. He said it was an ancient coin that had been in his family for generations, and it was probably worth $1 million. He put it into my hand, closed my fingers around it, and said some weird gibberish whilst crying. Then he screamed at me to run. I looked at it after I got the hell out of there, and it was just an ordinary silver dollar from 1972. I still have it actually. I felt like I should have probably called the police or done something about it, but I didn't. I just hope he never hurt anybody, and that he got the help he desperately needed. Number 5. This happened in the summer of 1993. My father and his girlfriend were living in Cardiff in the city centre. Not a particularly high crime area, a lot of student accommodation. I won't give the exact location, but there was a cafe nearby, named the Warm as Toast Cafe, amusingly abbreviated on the front as TWAT. At 6 AM, my dad gets up and walks down to the kitchen to get his morning cup of coffee. As he walks into the kitchen, he is welcomed by a random man sat at the kitchen table staring at him. Being the cool, collected guy he is, instead of freaking out, my dad asked the guy if he would like a cup of coffee as well. The breakfast intruder agrees and joins him. A few minutes later, my dad's girlfriend comes in, and also doesn't freak out, but instead offers to make him breakfast. So the three of them sit down, have breakfast, and have a chat for 20 minutes or so. Apparently the conversation was a bit weird and nonsensical, but they never mentioned what it was about. Once they've all finished their breakfast, they kindly escort the breakfast intruder through the front door, and after he leaves, they start freaking out and naturally call the police. They come over and take statements, and later on in the day, they're contacted by the local law enforcement, saying that they apprehended the breakfast intruder. Turns out, the guy was a paranoid schizophrenic, and was breaking into odd-numbered houses on the street. My dad's was the second house he'd entered. The first house, which was next door, that he'd gone to, was empty. That's where he left his tools, a sawn-off shotgun, and a lot of ammo. His plan was to shoot anyone in the odd-numbered houses on the street. When the police arrested him, he told them that my dad and his girlfriend were the nicest couple that he'd ever met, and that had stopped him from carrying out his plan. When people say I'm too laid back for my own good, I tell them this story, and it never fails to shut them up. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. These last 2 days have certainly been dark indeed, with that horrific shooting in Las Vegas. My thoughts go out to all of the families of those affected. Remember that if you want to share a story, you just need to submit it as a text post on my Reddit page, or alternatively, send it to me via email. Both links can be found in the description. And if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to not miss your daily dose of horror. Because as we know, if you don't hit like, YouTube assumes the video was uninteresting. So please show it some love. And if you would like to do something truly amazing today to help support the channel, you now can via Patreon. You can find the link in the description, as well as the links to my social media pages. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome and safe, and I'll see you in the next one.